Hi everyone, and welcome to Dr. Jankiro's lectures. So previously I did go over math conversion units, and I did go over also some examples. Today I'm going to go over rounding. So let's get into it. What is rounding? Rounding is basically going up a number or down a number. So it's basically going up or down a number. And why is rounding important? So rounding is actually important because when dosing a medication to a patient, let's take a pediatric patient, and these patients, they're small in size. Therefore, accuracy when it comes into dosing such medication is very important, as low dosage or higher of a dose, it can cause a problem to the patient. Not only that, rounding is actually also important because so many different medication comes in small dosages. So it's really important to round correctly because any mathematical error can give a different dose, resulting in different outcome to the patient. So what does it depend on? What does rounding depend on? So it really depends on what is the question asking you. If you're a student and the question is asking you, for example, rounding to the nearest whole number, then the answer needs to be a whole number. And what does a whole number mean? A whole number basically means there is no decimal places. And in addition to the question what is asking you, it depends on rounding up or down, and that depends on the number. So if we have, and I want you to pay attention to this, it's a rule that you gotta keep in mind. If we have a number that is higher than 5, then we're gonna round up. Or if it's less than 5, then we're gonna round down. So if it's higher than 5, it's gonna go up. If it's less than 5, we're gonna go down. So let's look into an example to see what I mean by that. So let's look at example number 1. Patient is taking 60.8 milligram BID. So there is a patient, it's taking 60.8 BID mean twice a day. What is the total milligram received daily? So we know patient is taking 60.8 milligram twice a day, so another 60.8 milligram. So the total of this, it's going to be 121.6 milligram. Okay, we're not done yet. The question says round to the nearest whole number. So what did I say going back? We gotta keep this rule in mind. If the number is higher than 5, we're gonna round up. So, and if the number is less than 5, we're gonna round down. And we said that whole number mean no decimal places. So we need to take this decimal place away. We don't need this decimal place over here. So what is a whole number of this? So we know this is 121.6. So where do I look on the number to figure if it's higher than 5 or less than 5? So we look on this 6 over here. So let me take this number, 121.6 milligram. I look at this number over here. We only look at the number before the decimal place. And we look at it to see if it's higher than 5, which 6 is higher than 5, then this number, it's gonna be 122 milligram. And that's the answer to this question. So let me explain this rule again. So what do I mean by higher than 5? So any number that is 5, or actually, so higher or actually equal to 5, it's gonna go up. So 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. Any of these number, if it's in the place, instead of 6 over here, it's gonna go up. So instead of 121, it's gonna be 122. So let's assume that this answer actually was 122 21.4. So what do we do in this case? So we know the rule says if it's less than 5, then we're going to round down. So since it's less than 5, so this is going to be 121 milligram. And this is what I mean by rounding down. So when do I round down? If a number is 0, so there is a 0 over there, and instead of 4, 1, 2, 3, and 4. So now let's look into rounding to the nearest tenth. What do I mean rounding to the nearest tenth? So rounding to the nearest tenth mean that rounding to one decimal place. It could be rounding to the nearest hundredth, which means 2 decimal places. So let me take an example to explain what does that mean. But I also want you to keep in mind the rule that it's equal or higher than 5, it's going to be rounding up. And if it's less than 5, we're rounding down. So let's look into this example. So patient is taking 6.44 milligram daily. So 6.44 daily in 2 divided doses. So he's taken this. This is the total daily from 2 doses. What is the milligram per dose? So we're asking, what is this? Basically divided into 2. So 6.44 milligram divided into 2. And the rest of the question says, round to the nearest tenth. So let's divide this into 2. So what is this? Divided 6.44 milligram into 2, that's 3.22 milligram. So we said that rounding to the nearest tenth is that we look at the decimal place. We need 1 decimal place. So in this case, and instead of looking at this number, so instead of taking this number out, giving a whole number like what we did over here, we're going to keep 1 decimal place. So we need this answer over here. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at this number, the 2 over here. Okay? And we're going to keep it together. And when we're rounding up and down, it's going to depend on this one over here. So when we're doing a whole number, it's going to be directly the number after the decimal place. Okay? After the period. This number. When we're coming to the nearest tenth, it's not going to be the first, it's going to be the second number over here. This is the number that we're going to be looking at and determining if it's equal or higher than 5 or if it's less than 5. So here we have 2. So 2 is basically one of those numbers which is less than 5. So the answer to this whole question, it's going to be 3.2 milligram. And that's the final answer for this question. Now let's assume that the answer actually was 3.27 milligram. Okay, let's assume this one, and the question is still asking us to round to the nearest tenth. So looking at this number over here, which is 7. 7 goes with these numbers. So therefore, this is a rounding up. So it's going to be 3.3 milligram. So we went up 1 number to this after the period, so 1 decimal place. So that's what it means by nearest tenth. And if it was 100, then we're going to look at the third number. Instead of the second after the decimal place, we're going to look at the third one and determine if it's equal or higher than 5 or if it's less than 5. One thing that I want you, a second rule to keep in mind all the time is rounding is only done at the last step. You cannot round every single step. Why? Well, if you're rounding in every single step, so for this example, they're very simple. They're only, with 2 or 1 steps, we could resolve these questions. But there are questions that you have to follow 5 or maybe 8 steps to get the final answer. And if you're rounding in every single step, you're gonna probably end up with a different number. And what we said previously, that accuracy is very important when dosing medication, especially if it's pediatric or if the medication comes in small doses. So let's look into an example. What do I mean by rounding, and how is it different if you round in every step or last step? So here, patient is taken for medication. So patient is taken for medication. He has 4 medication at home. He's taking these 4 medication. The first medication is 3.2 milligram TID. TID, this means 3 times daily. So he's taking 3.2 milligram 3 times daily. And for the second medication is taken, so this is first, second 50.7 milligram daily, third medication 4.5 milligram daily, and the last, fourth medication 8.5 milligram daily. The question is asking, what is the total of milligram for all these medication combined? Now, let me do it in the wrong way, which is rounding in every single step, and we can do another one that we're gonna be rounding only at the last step. So let's do this. So 3.2 milligram, and this is 3 times a day, so multiply by 3. So this equal 9.6 milligram. So this is medication number 1. So this is med number 1. So 9.6, if I were to round, because this is 6, okay, the question says round to the nearest whole number. So because it's higher than 5, so we're gonna go 10 milligrams. So this is 10 milligram. So med 2, we have 50.7. So 50.7 milligram, and this is only once daily. So we need to round this also all the way up, because 7 is higher than 5. So it's gonna be 51 milligram. Med number 3 is 4.5 milligram. So 4.5 milligram. So also we have 5 over here, which is rounding up. So it's gonna be 5 milligram. And the fourth medication, so this is 3, this is number 4 over here. The fourth one is 8.5 milligrams, so 8.5 milligram. So also we have 5 over here, so we're gonna round up again. So it's gonna be 9 milligram. Now, what's the question asking? It's asking, what is the total addition of these 4 medication? So if I take 10 plus 51, that's 61, plus 5, that's 66, plus 9, that's 75 milligram. So the total of these is basically 75 milligram. And what did I do in this case? I rounded every single step. And of course, this is the wrong way of doing it. And this is only an explanation question. Now, different question may have different complexity. So that's why it's really important to keep in mind, we will always be tended to round a number. Just keep in mind to round at the end. So now let's do it the other way around. So let's do it the correct way. So we have 3.2, medication number 1, times the 3 is 9.6 milligram, that's med number 1. Number 2 is 50.7, this is 50.7 milligram. Number 3 is 4.5 milligram, and the last one is 8.5 milligram. So now let's add these all together. If we add all this together, the answer, it's going to be 73.3 milligram. And the question is asking, round to the nearest whole number. So what we do is always look the number after the period, because we don't want any decimal places. And the number is 3, which goes to this category over here. It's less than 5. Therefore, we're gonna round this down. So the final answer, it's going to be 73 milligram. Do you see the difference? The final answer here was 75 and here it's 73. So there is 2 milligram difference. And this could be very important for dosing this medication for a pediatric, for a child. And because it could be important in terms of efficacy, in terms of how effective this medication, if we're given a low of a dose or the correct dose. This is why it's really important to round only at the last step. So this is it, you guys, for this rounding lecture. And thank you for watching.